Versatility is the word to describe the writing career of Kyra Davis Lurie. She has been both a screenwriter and a mystery writer. Her Sophie Capps Mysteries are a 5-book series. Born in Santa Clara, California, she attended the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. She later received a degree from Golden State University in Business and the Humanities. Creating an updated version of a beloved classic like The Great Gatsby is a bold move. Relocating it to from 1920s Long Island to post-World War II Los Angeles and its black elite is an even more dramatic departure. She spins a tale of wealth, corruption, and the promise that the Golden State of California held for Black professionals and entertainers. It explores the American dream when it collides with the brutal reality of racism. Her book has been warmly reviewed. One reviewer wrote, "Lurie has not only paid homage to Fitzgerald, but has also carved out a unique narrative that is rich, relevant, and reflective of the struggles and triumphs faced by the Black community in post-World War II America." Reviewers were also impressed by the historical accuracy. One reviewer wrote, "Perhaps the great man's greatest strength is Lurie's integration of real historical figures into her fictional narrative. Hattie McDaniel, Louise Beaver, and Lena Horne all make appearances. It is evident that she's done a deep research, including diving into the archives of the Black newspapers of the day. We are so pleased that Kyra Davis Lurie has been able to join us today. In fact, she's on her way to Portugal permanently in only a few weeks, so we just caught her. And so please help me give her a very warm welcome.
Hello. So my career as an author, or the beginnings of it, were excavated from the wreckage of an extraordinarily bad decision on my part, which was when I was young, I married the wrong guy. And so in my childhood and my life, I had always loved writing. I wrote for myself, but I also was always drawn to the creative world. That was important in my family. It was essential in my family. They did not care what university I went to or how much money I made. None of that was important. But what was important is that I start my piano lessons at 5, that I take ballet, my voice lessons at 12, that I learn all the major painters, that I know Van Gogh and Monet and Gauguin, and that I read all the books that I can. That was essential. It wasn't really a choice of what life was. And I learned early on that, there were certain things that weren't given to me as a kid. Like, I was told that the Barbie dream house was too cheap for the price. But if I wanted a poster of a Renoir, it's like that, because that was part of my education. So I wrote. My grandmother wanted me to be a writer. Maybe it's because that's what people wanted of me. I went in a different direction. I fell in love with acting, and that was my center for a while. But at that time, I was looking at the roles that were available to Black women, and I just couldn't see myself in them. And I tried, but it didn't feel authentic, and it didn't feel right. I went into some kind of fashion design and that was also creative. And then I got married, and I gave up parts of myself for that marriage. And by the time the marriage started to fall apart, I was working at a sports club, a tennis club, where we had championship matches there. I sold sponsorships and such. So I had moved away from my creative roots, even though I was still writing for myself periodically. My marriage, the pinnacle moment when I was with my now ex-husband, and we're talking about the end of our marriage, is also when I got a phone call saying, do you see you have the television on? I said, yes. He goes, you see what's happening? At this point, I had a child who had just turned 2, and I said, no, and she said, you need to change it to anything other than Sesame Street. And that's when I realized that at the moment that my marriage was falling apart, 9/11 had just happened. So the world fell apart, my marriage fell apart. It was not a great divorce financially. He had he had racked up a lot of debt. It's a community property state. It was really hard. And by the way, it's hard to sell sponsorships to championship matches right after the World Trade Center's gone down. So it was a difficult time, and I had a 2-year-old. And I had been reading all the classics, rereading. I just finished the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, and I was reading classics I hadn't had a chance to read. But when everything is that dark, Dostoevsky starts to feel a little heavy. And so I'm like, I need something light, I need something fun. And so I started reading that. Someone gave me a Jan Jovanovic. I'm like, oh, that's fun. But then I wanted like something different, but in that same kind of light, kind of fun, silly, but with a little bit of an edge vein. I couldn't find that book. And so I'm like, well, I'll just write it. And so I started writing this story. And as I was writing this story, I told one of my coworkers, I said, look, I'm not in love with my husband anymore. It's not hard for me to let go of that relationship, but this idea of mommy and daddy and baby under one roof, I'm having a really hard time letting go of that. And she said to me, yeah, you know what, it's not the end of your life, but it is the end of a dream. So all I could tell you is find new dreams. And while I know some people would think that's harsh, I really appreciated her saying it. I appreciated that there was no punches being pulled, that this is what it is. And I kept writing the story and writing the story. That was an escape for me. The book was an escape. The book was fun. It had girl friendships in it. It was a little sexy, but it was also, with a cynical edge. It was a murder mystery, so I got to kill a lot of people, which was so important at that time. And I just wrote it, and I'm like, you know what? I'm finding my voice again. This is the me. This is the person I had started to give up. And I'm like, I think I need to pursue this a little bit more. And so I began to throw myself into it more and more, and I did not know what I was doing. Yes, I had written poetry, I had written short stories. I had never written a manuscript. I had never even attempted to write a manuscript. I went to Borders on how to write a book, right? And I'm putting this thing together. I joined a writer's group, and I realized that I was finding my new dream, that this was the dream, and that this felt a lot more fulfilling and satisfying to me than the dream I thought I was supposed to have of domestic bliss, at least in that scenario. And you cannot plan for this. I happened to write the correct book at the correct time. And so that book my mother, again, financially things were very, very tough at that moment. The debt, just horror. And my mother paid for me to go to the Willamette Writers Festival, and she watched my son, and that's how I met a whole bunch of agents. And I sent it out, and a whole bunch got back to me. And then I ended up getting a 3-book deal out of this book that was called Sex, Murder, and a Double Latte. And it was fabulous, and I got at that time what would have been considered to be a pretty decent advance. I will say that what that meant for me is I was able to pay off my debts. It did not mean that I was living high on the hog. I was not living in a lap of luxury, but The debts were paid. And they were not small. Okay. And I was able to take care of my kid. And that was really just all me at that point. And I remember taking him to a swim lesson, and the book, The Sex, Murder, and Double Latte, got a lot of publicity. There was a lot of buzz around it. I put my son in, he had just come to swim lessons, and I taking him back to the car. I'm strapping him into his car seat. It was 5 at that time, of my 20-plus-year-old Volvo. And this woman who's walking by with her kid, taking the little girl to swim lessons, I guess the mother was looking at me. I didn't notice because I was busy with my own kid. And the little girl said, "Who's that, Mommy?" And she said, "Oh, that's Kyra Davis, honey. She's famous." And I didn't say anything. I just got in the front seat. My son, again, is sitting in the back of this broken-down car, and he looks around and he goes, "Funny, I thought fame would look different than this." And so, it's like this perception. It's like, oh, you've been in the New York Times. You got this whole excerpt in Cosmo. People were like, oh, you're going to be buying, a home. And at that time, I was in Northern California in Pacific Heights. And I'm like, no, but we're okay. So that's really the big thing. And there was something else that was happening. I wrote that book as an escape for me. But I started getting emails from readers saying, hey, my husband's in Afghanistan, and this book got me through. My daughter was premature, and I've been sitting next to her incubator just reading aloud because it's been helping me get through. The emotional escape that I needed in that book, I was able to give to other people. I've obviously, now I'm writing, literary historical fiction. It's a long journey, but I'm still so grateful that I was able to do that. And it's like, and even though, yes, if I look back at those books, I'm like, oh, I would write this different, that different. I'm never done, okay? But I know what those books provided to people, and I know what they provided for me. It ended up being a series, and it was a real gift, and it put me on this whole different trajectory in life too. From that point on, I wrote several books in that series, and I wrote one standalone novel that was loosely based on, again, that wreckage of a marriage. And then the book had been branded chick lit. And I didn't really know when I wrote the book what chick lit was, but I knew that it was a term my publisher was very fond of. And so I went with that, but the problem is that when you brand a book like that, when that trend goes away, so do you. And so the sales really never fell off to a major degree, but my publisher felt like it really wasn't fitting their brand anymore. And I had to take another turn. And that was really scary. Again, I was still a single parent. This had become my career. I was a full-time writer. There was nothing else going on. And my son, who's just like this amazing human being, was not low maintenance. And so I was balancing a lot. And that is when my editor, who had been over at HarperCollins, had moved over to Simon & Schuster, and I wrote him asking him a question about something completely unrelated. He's like, yeah, I can't help you with that, but here's the thing. Would you be interested in writing an erotic romance for me? I need erotic romance. I think you'd be great. And I had not thought about writing an erotic romance, actually. And I'm not a huge romance reader, and I didn't know, and the romance world is, I have come to learn, it's a world. I mean, the communities in there are strong. The convention, it's it's a whole thing. They have all this cool swag. There's so much going on that I was not privy to. But I had read, a few. It's not like I had never read a romance, and it's not like I had never read a romance that I liked. I just wasn't really into happy endings at that point in my life. So I decided I would read Emmanuel, the French erotic book, and I actually found that book to be fascinating. I mean, completely off the rails, but fascinating. And there was Mrs. Chantley's Lover, and there was just really, and Annie's Nin. There were interesting books out there. I'm like, okay, let me try that. And so I wrote Just One Night, and I actually had an enormous amount of fun with it. And I wrote, I got this. There was this one review in Publishers Weekly that they loved the book, and they said Davis skillfully creates an uplifting story in which sex is presented both as freedom and as a metaphor for power, and where raw chemistry is a clear winner over bland complacency. And the reason I love that review is that is very much what I was going for. I wanted sex to be in this book about freedom, about reclaiming power, about like this expanding your horizons. And when I wrote it, I was thinking about how at that time there had been all these stories of these people who had been discovered to be gay because they had done something reckless, right? Whether they had been caught cheating in a place that was kind of like a semi-public place or whatever, just like, things sort of politicians trying to solicit somebody for sex in the men's bathroom, that kind of stuff. And I was thinking about if you try to hide who you are, if you try to hide that from the world, eventually you will implode. You will do something self-destructive. You will do something self-destructive in order to sort of out yourself. And that's not exclusive to the gay community. If you are hiding who you are, if you are containing who you are, you will find a way to do something. Your subconscious will get you to do something reckless that gets you out of that prison. And so that's what I was exploring with Just One Night, this woman who had been told she needs to be this way, was really trying to do it, and then it just goes completely off the rails. And she goes on this sexual adventure that's dangerous and exciting, and she finds herself, and so on and so forth. It was extraordinarily successful. That was the lowest advance I'd ever gotten in my life. And that book sold 500,000 copies. So you never know, right? But unfortunately for me, I'm just not in love enough, in terms of at least my personal writing, with the romance format. I kept trying to add things. Like my next book in romance was kind of a take on capitalism, which it's like just one line. My last romance, I love that book, but it is definitely kind of it deals with kind of mental illness, and again, it wasn't right for that genre. But I also realized that by this point I had remarried to genuinely the love of my life. My new husband, Rod, and my son bonded in ways I could never have anticipated. Rod adopted my son, and I had this dream that I thought I had given up on. And, I'm out of time. So I didn't need to escape anymore. And that's when I wrote The Great Man, this historical fiction book, because I had heard the story of West Adam Heights, Sugar Hill, here in LA, where this extraordinarily wealthy, affluent African-American community had come together in the 1940s. They were living in mansions. I heard how Hattie McDaniel lived there. I mean, there were black oil tycoons, black business moguls, black Black hoteliers and the Black Hollywood, and Hattie McDaniel would have these gala events where she would have guests from Lena Horne to Clark Gable and Bing Crosby, Duke Ellington's entertainment. And I thought, oh my God, that's The Great Gatsby, but it's real and it's Black. And it felt like such a perfect marriage. And I wanted to tell that story because the individuals in that community, they actually end up changing history, and a lot of their names have been lost to most people in history. And so I wanted to elevate their story within this and bring their story of America into the structure of the all-American story. And it was a joy. So that's it. Sorry. Thank you.
Welcome back to this afternoon's Q&A. I'm still Mary Fauver Holmes, and I'm sorry to interrupt the wonderful presentation, so I'm going to start our questions by asking, tell us more about the great man.
Yes.
But my specific question is, The Great Gatsby was published 100 years ago. 100 years ago. So, did you plan your writing and timing around the centennial anniversary of Gatsby?
So this is one of those things, again, where, like, I just lucked out. Okay, you know, if I hadn't heard the story I heard about West Adam Heights, when I first heard about that was on KCRW, which is our public radio station. Yay, exactly. We all love KCRW, right? And it wasn't until I heard that it even occurred to me to bring The Great Gatsby in. Now, maybe because it's not like I love The Great Gatsby, and it was probably in the back of my mind, just that book itself, because of the centennial, but I didn't do it specifically to match the centennial. I did it because the stories just married so beautifully. Yeah.
And you started with Charlie Trammell getting off the train. He's a veteran, he's African American, his cousin has invited him out to visit, come see what's going on in LA. You'll never believe it. And he gets there and he doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. So Charlie comes, he's very autodidactic. He's a sharecropper's son, and comes from the Jim Crow South of the tobacco fields of Virginia, then goes off to fight in World War II. He's not welcome in coming back to Virginia because Black soldiers were not. So he has this long-lost cousin who he occasionally corresponds with, who had left that area when she was a child, telling me about the magic of her neighborhood in Los Angeles. She's always been an exaggerator, he thinks, but he has nothing to lose. He comes out and finds, from Jim Crow South, he goes to this area where this predominantly Black neighborhood where people are living in mansions. There's movie stars, they have servants. It's a whole different thing for him, and that I just loved discovering that world through his eyes. Yeah.
No, I liked Charlie.
Thank you.
and I liked the role, but I thoroughly enjoyed the book as well. You include many stars from the golden age of Hollywood.
Yes.
And Louise Beavers, Lena Horne, Hattie McDaniel. Do you have a favorite movie starring one of those stars?
Oh, gosh. That is a very, very, very good question.
We didn't practice these.
No, yeah, exactly. So, look, I think that there's, in every one of those, the roles that those actors played, or the movies they were in where they played roles, there were some real strengths, like Imitation of Life. I think there's some really interesting things in it, and yet there's also a lot of things that are hard to ignore in terms of they're offensive, right? Lena Horne left Hollywood for a reason. Ethel Waters left Hollywood for a reason. And yet their individual performances, whether it's in Cabin in the Sky, which was one of the very few all-Black films produced at that time, or again, or Imitation of Life, or even Gone with the Wind with Hattie McDaniel, her performance, for all the problems, her performance was stellar, and she deserved that Academy Award. So that's my kind of half answer to that.
No, but her story among her friends is one of conflict.
Oh my God.
Mammy in Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, exactly. And in they called it LA Sugar Hill. There was a lot of conflict between the business and the Hollywood elite, the business elites and the Hollywood elite. They didn't like each other. The business elites felt that Hattie McDaniel, Louise Beavers, that they were impeding social progress by taking these stereotypical, demeaning roles. And whereas Hattie and Louise felt, is this not better than white actors in blackface? Do we not have representation? We're doing what we can. So, but Hattie McDaniel took a lot of grief from her community. And it was always this push-pull of them celebrating her success and them chastising her for her roles.
And she was a success. She had a big
Huge.
house. She hosted these big parties.
Yeah.
It was just Sugar Hill. Part of why I loved the book is that I knew nothing of that part of the history of my world. I grew up in Southern California, and it was new to me, and I loved it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, that was really exciting for me, too.
And now you're off to a new adventure of your own.
Yeah.
Kyra and I chatted a little bit earlier about making a move from one home to a new home, which I have just done, and she is doing from one country to another country. And so tell us a little about the why and the how and the when of a move to Lisbon, Portugal.
Right. So my ticket to Lisbon is on April 18th. And my husband and I, he's a filmmaker, we're going to be opening up a film company there to bring productions, American productions, and using Portuguese crew and such, as well as other actors to Portugal. So that's one. Two, not a horrible time to leave the country. And I feel like I'm, to some degree, pulling a James Baldwin. I just need to step away for a second. Maybe I'll come back, but I need a minute. So so there's so much going on right now. I mean, I just had the vet call me just like a half hour ago saying, okay, this is what you need to get the health certificate to the dog to get to the Portugal. I'm like, I can't right now. But it's just, there's a lot going on, but it's also really exciting, and it's creatively a very, very inspiring place and conducive to writing.
I was just going to say, we wish you the very best
Thank
on your
you.
new adventure, and I
Thank
hope
you.
you'll keep writing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it.